Nobody knew the new kid was a champion fighter. By the time they found out, it was already too late. They called Michael Stone fresh meat. Every single day they pushed him around like he was nothing. Every single day he took it without fighting back. And every single day they got bolder. The thing about bullies, they never check who they're messing with. They just see what they want to see. Weakness. That's exactly what Jake Thompson and his crew saw in Michael. A quiet kid, an easy target, their biggest mistake. Get him. 2 words. That's all Jake needed to say. His followers, Chris and Derek, slammed Michael into the lockers. The sound echoed through the hallway. Students gathered, phones out, ready for another show. This was routine now. The daily beating of the new kid. Michael didn't make a sound, didn't fight back, just stood there, taking it. His face blank, empty, like none of it mattered. "Fight back!" Chris taunted, shoving him again. "Come on, do something!" Michael's eyes stayed down, his breathing steady, controlled, like he was waiting for something. What they didn't know? Michael had been fighting since he was 6 years old. His father ran the top MMA gym in Chicago. Champions trained there, killers. And Michael? He trained with all of them, every day, for 12 years. The bullying got worse. Monday, they dumped his backpack in the toilet. Tuesday, they stole his clothes during gym class. Wednesday, they cornered him in the cafeteria, threw his food on the ground, made him watch as they stomped on it. Still, Michael said nothing, did nothing, just watched, observed, calculated. "What's wrong with this freak?" Derek whispered to Jake. "It's like he doesn't even care." Jake didn't answer. Something bothered him about Michael. The way he moved, the way he watched everything. Those eyes, too calm, too steady, like a predator studying its prey. Thursday changed everything. Jake decided to end it once and for all. Make an example of the new kid. Show everyone what happens when you don't know your place. The cafeteria was packed. Perfect audience. Jake walked up to Michael's table, his crew flanking him. Students went quiet. Phones came out. Everyone knew what was coming. "Stand up," Jake ordered. Michael kept eating. "I said stand up!" Jake slammed his hands on the table. Michael looked up. For the first time, he really looked at Jake. Their eyes met. Jake felt his blood freeze. Because Michael's eyes weren't afraid. They weren't angry. They were amused, like he'd been waiting for this moment. Like everything until now had just been a game. Jake's hand trembled. He covered it by knocking Michael's tray off the table. After school, behind the gym, time to teach you a real lesson. Michael stood up slowly. The cafeteria went dead silent. He stepped closer to Jake, close enough to whisper. His first words after weeks of silence. "I was hoping you'd say that." The whisper carried through the silent cafeteria. Students exchanged looks. Something was different. Something had changed. Jake backed away, trying to hide his fear. 3 o'clock. Don't be late unless you're scared. Michael's lip curled. Not quite a smile, something darker. "I'll be there. Will you?" The challenge hung in the air. Jake couldn't back down now. Not with everyone watching, not with his reputation on the line. Word spread like wildfire, the quiet kid versus the king of the school. Everyone would be there. Nobody wanted to miss it. Final bell rang at 2:45. By 2:50, hundreds of students surrounded the back of the gym. Jake and his crew arrived first, trying to look tough, but Jake's hands wouldn't stop shaking. "He won't show," Chris said, but his voice was uncertain. "Shut up," Jake snapped. He checked his phone, 2:55. The crowd grew, phones out, recording, waiting. 2:58. No sign of Michael. "Guess he chickened out," Derek laughed nervously. 3 o'clock. Nothing. Jake started to relax. See, just another cow. The crowd went silent. Every head turned, every phone pointed in the same direction. Michael walked through the parting crowd. But he walked different now. No more hunched shoulders, no more looking down. He moved like water, smooth, controlled, dangerous. Jake's heart stopped, because now he saw what he should have seen weeks ago. The calluses on Michael's knuckles, the perfect balance in his stance, the cold calculation in his eyes. Last chance, Michael said, his voice carrying across the silent crowd. Walk away. Jake looked around, everyone watching, waiting. He couldn't back down. His reputation, his power, everything depended on this moment. Get him, Jake yelled. Chris and Derek charged forward. Michael didn't move, just stood there, waiting, a small smile playing on his lips. And that's when they learned. Sometimes the quiet ones are the ones you should fear the most. Chris reached Michael first. Big mistake. 1 second, Chris was charging forward. The next, he was airborne. Michael moved like lightning. Grab, twist, flip. Chris hit the ground hard. The air rushed from his lungs in a sharp gasp. The crowd erupted. Hundreds of phones recorded the moment. Nobody could believe what they just saw. Derek froze mid-charge. His confidence shattered. Because now he saw what Michael really was. A weapon, perfectly trained, perfectly controlled. What's wrong? Michael's voice cut through the shocked silence. Thought you wanted to fight. Jake's face went pale. This wasn't supposed to happen. The quiet kid was supposed to break, supposed to run, supposed to beg. Chris struggled to his feet, gasping. You're dead. He swung wildly at Michael's face. Michael didn't even blink, just tilted his head slightly. The punch missed by inches. What happened next was brutal. Michael's counter was perfect. 3 strikes, precise, devastating, body, head, leg. Chris crumpled, clutching his ribs, eyes wide with shock and pain. Who's next? Michael asked. His voice remained calm, like he was asking about the weather. Derek looked at Jake, waiting for orders, but Jake stood frozen, because now everyone could see it. The way Michael moved, the power in every step, the deadly grace of someone who'd spent years learning how to fight. What's wrong, Jake? Michael stepped forward. Not so fun when your target fights back? The crowd pressed closer. The energy had shifted. They weren't watching a beating anymore. They were watching justice. Jake's hands trembled, but his ego was bigger than his fear. Get him! He screamed at Derek. Both of you! Chris staggered up. Derek steeled himself. They charged together. Michael smiled. The fight lasted exactly 12 seconds. Derek's punch missed by a mile. Michael caught his arm, twisted, and sent him sprawling into Chris. They crashed together, tangled limbs and cursing. Michael didn't wait. He moved in. Every strike precise, every movement calculated. He'd trained for this, lived for this. Chris went down first. A sweep took his legs out. His head bounced off the concrete. He didn't get up. Derek managed one desperate swing. Michael caught his fist, turned his own momentum against him. Derek's shoulder popped. His scream echoed across the courtyard. The crowd watched in stunned silence. Phones still recording. Nobody could believe what they were seeing. Jake stood alone now, his crew destroyed, his power crumbling. And Michael? He hadn't even broken a sweat. Your turn, Michael said softly. Jake took a step back, then another, his face twisted with rage and fear. You think this changes anything? You're still nothing. You're still... Michael moved. One step. That's all it took. One step forward, and Jake's words died in his throat. "I've trained with champions since I was 6 years old." Michael's voice carried across the silent crowd. "My father runs the top MMA gym in Chicago. Professional fighters, champions, killers. They taught me everything." Another step. Jake retreated. "You know what else they taught me?" Michael continued. "Control, when to fight, when to wait, when to strike." The crowd pressed closer. Nobody dared speak. Nobody dared move. "I let you bully me for weeks," Michael said. "Watched you, studied you, learned your patterns, your weaknesses, your fear." Jake's back hit the wall. Nowhere left to run. "Want to know what I learned?" Michael stopped inches from Jake's face. "You're not a predator. You're just a coward who never met someone who could fight back." Jake swung. Pure panic, pure desperation. Michael's counter was poetry in motion. Grab, turn, slam. Jake hit the ground hard, the fight beaten out of him in one perfect move. "Stay down," Michael warned, "or I'll show you what I can really do." Jake stayed down, blood dripping from his nose, pride shattered, power broken. The silence was deafening. Hundreds of students stood frozen, phones still recording. They'd just witnessed something unprecedented. The king of the school, dethroned in minutes. Michael turned to the crowd, his voice quiet but caring. "Anyone else want to test me?" Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. "That's what I thought." He walked away. The crowd parted like water. Not out of fear, but respect, because they just learned a valuable lesson. Never judge someone by their silence. Sometimes the quiet ones are the most dangerous of all. The videos spread like wildfire. By next morning, everyone had seen it. The quiet kid destroying the school bullies, the perfect takedowns, the controlled power, the moment everything changed. Jake wasn't in school that day. Neither were Chris or Derek, but their absence spoke volumes. Their reign of terror? Over. Their reputation? Shattered. Their power? Gone. Michael walked through the halls different now. Head high, shoulders back, no more pretending, no more hiding. Students whispered as he passed. Not mockery this time. Respect, awe, fear. A freshman got shoved into a locker that morning. The bully turned around and froze. Michael stood there, watching, just watching. The bully helped the freshman up, apologized, walked away quick. Word spread fast. Mess with anyone, you mess with Michael. But Michael wasn't interested in being the new king. Didn't want power, didn't want followers. He had a different mission, lunchtime. Michael sat at his usual table alone. But now, students approached, careful, cautious. Can we sit here?" a girl asked. Sarah, she'd been bullied too, called names, humiliated. Michael nodded. More came, the outcasts, the bullied, the ones who never had protection before. "How long have you been fighting?" someone asked. Michael looked up. 12 years. Started when I was 6. "Why didn't you fight back sooner?" His answer changed everything. "Because fighting is the last resort, not the first. I gave them every chance to stop, to change, to be better." The cafeteria went quiet. Everyone listening. "My father taught me something important," Michael continued. "True strength isn't about hurting people. It's about protecting them." Sarah spoke up. "But you destroyed Jake and his crew." "They made their choice," Michael said. "They chose violence. I just showed them the consequences." More students gathered. The stories came out. How Jake and his crew had terrorized them. How they'd lived in fear. How Michael had changed everything. "Will they come back?" a freshman asked. Fear in his voice. "They might," Michael said. "But they won't be the same. Fear works both ways. Now they know what it feels like." The atmosphere in school shifted. The hierarchy crumbled. Because now everyone understood. Power built on fear could be broken. Bullies could be stopped. Change was possible. Jake returned a week later, face healed, pride still broken. He saw Michael in the hallway, looked down, walked away fast. Chris and Derek came back too, but something was different. The arrogance gone, the cruelty faded. They'd learned their lesson the hard way. 1 month later, Michael sat in the cafeteria surrounded by friends. Real friends, not followers, not fear-driven allies, people who respected him for who he was, not what he could do. A new kid walked in, looked lost, scared, like Michael once did. 2 juniors started toward him, looking for fresh meat. Old habits die hard. Michael stood up. The junior saw him, remembered the videos, walked away quick. Sarah waved the new kid over. Sit with us. The new kid hesitated, then saw Michael, recognition in his eyes. He'd seen the videos too. It's safe here, Michael said. Simple words, powerful meaning, because that's what Michael had really done. He hadn't just beaten the bullies, he'd created a safe space. Shown everyone that strength wasn't about domination, it was about protection. The new kid sat down, smiled, relaxed for the first time. And that's how change happens. Not through more violence, not through revenge, but through standing up, through showing others they can stand up too. Michael looked around the cafeteria. No more hierarchies, no more fear, just students being students, living, learning, growing. His father's words echoed in his mind. The strongest person in the room should be the gentlest. He'd proven that true, shown everyone that real power isn't about how many people you can hurt. It's about how many you can protect. The quiet kid they'd mistaken for weak, he'd become their shield, their protector, their reminder that sometimes the most powerful people are the ones who choose when not to use their power. And that's the thing about judging people, about assuming, about underestimating. Sometimes the quiet ones aren't weak. Sometimes they're just waiting. Sometimes they're the strongest of all. If you've ever been bullied, if you've ever felt powerless, remember this story. Remember Michael. Remember that strength comes in many forms. Hit subscribe if you believe in standing up against bullying. Leave a comment. What would you have done in Michael's place? Would you have shown mercy to the bullies or gone for full revenge? Because in the end, it's not about the fight. It's about the choice. The choice to use your strength to protect, not destroy. To lift others up, not push them down. And that's a choice we all have to make.